Ta-da. Okay, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, fellow photographers. It is May the 3rd, 2021, and we're here tonight for an image review. But first, let me tell you about the upcoming events. This Wednesday, we have a special session on railroad photography. Joe has really done a great job of negotiating with the folks at East Broad Top Railroad, and then he ran into Pete LaRue, and Pete's a railroad photographer who travels all over the world giving workshops. And he talked Pete into donating his time Wednesday night to teach us how to photograph railroads and locomotives and all that good stuff. So 7 o'clock Wednesday night. I sent the link out previously, but I will send that out again tomorrow in the follow-up email. And the purpose of Pete's session on Wednesday night, of course, is to prepare you for your trip to the East Broad Top Railroad on Saturday, May the 15th. Okay. Also, details were sent previously, but will be sent again tomorrow. Okay. East Broad Top Railroad, Saturday, May the 15th. That'll be a unique experience. Now, on Monday, May the 10th, that's next Monday night, a week from today, Joe is going to do a live image processing session. That information was sent out earlier. So if you want to have Joe process one of your images, you can follow the directions there and emailing your image to him.
I have to go myself. Nobody's here.
Okay, guys, I'm gonna Bryson, you're gonna have to mute yourself. You're gonna have to unmute yourself because I need to mute everybody. We're getting some background noise, so I'll do that. And then if you unmute yourself, you'll be good to go. Okay. On Saturday, May the 22nd, there's a trip to York to the Kiwanis Lake Rookery. Okay, Saturday, May 22nd. Photograph some birds. And the trips committee has met online, and they're in the process of formulating some fabulous trips for this summer, about 2 per month or a little more than that. So look for that upcoming within the next week or two. But we're set now through the end of May at least, and then this will cover the rest. Those trips will cover the rest of the summer. If you don't see me or you won't see me for the next couple of weeks, I'll put it that way, don't panic. My wife and I are taking a road trip. We're getting in the car on Thursday, and we're going to travel an estimated 5,500 miles by going out west and visiting some national parks and some other famous locations. So we won't be back till June, but thank goodness I've got Joe Farrell to fill in for me. He'll be sending out the emails and hosting the meetings. So have fun. So tonight, let's get started. We got Bryson Leidich. Thank you, Bryson, for joining us again tonight. We appreciate you taking the time and sharing your expertise. Bryson, if you don't know, is world famous. He can tell you a little bit about that, but he's been in this business a long, long time. He's been a professional photographer. He has judged competitions at the state level for the photographers, the Photographic Society. In the state level, and we are pleased to have him with us tonight. So as we did the last time, I'll ask the photographer for comments regarding his or her image after each review, but we won't open it up for comments from everybody. It just seems to take a little too long. So Bryson, it's all yours. Thank you.
Okay, you can hear me, I trust.
Yes, we can.
Very good. Hi, that blank screen up there is me. Those of you who know me, hi again. Those of you who don't know me, Dennis gave you the basics. I've been a judge for camera clubs and for professional photographers in Pennsylvania, Florida, Indiana, New York, etc. And for the PPFA, public or the Professional Photographers of America, out in I was a convention speaker and panel judge. They judge by panels. They usually have 6 to 8 judges at a time, and they judge somewhere between 1,000 and 2,000 images in a sitting. If that gives you an idea of how much easier it is to do what you guys are doing. Um, uh, I'm sort of semi-retired or mostly retired, or I wish I was retired, pick one. Um, I do occasionally get roped into doing some things for longtime clients that still want to irritate me, and that's perfectly fine. I don't mind that at all. I do a variety of things. I have done a variety of things. My primary aim in photography was architecture and interiors on one hand, corporate and business portraiture. And I did that for several very large corporations, including AMP and Gannett Fleming and Hershey Foods for over 20 years each, over 25 years each, actually. And also I did a lot of macro and small product photography for AMP. And that's how I kept myself out of trouble. So I have had a variety of experiences. When you work in a smaller town like Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, instead of a big town like New York, you have to be able to do a little bit of everything. So anyway, I learned a lot of things over the years in my attempts to be a photographer. And one of them was that you learn more from what you did wrong than what you did right. And that sort of grabs a hold of my philosophy of reviewing images and judging images, because one of the things that the PP of A did, were teaching me how to be a judge, and they actually do that, was that you start with a score of 100, and then you start subtracting points for things about the image that are not as good as they could be. And if you fall below a certain line, which happens to be 80%, then you can't get a blue ribbon. Then you go down to 70% and then down to 60%, and at below 60%, you don't get recognized at all. But the idea is that there's no first, second, or third place winner. There just simply is, are you a competent photographer or an exceptional photographer? And then you fall into one of three different categories. So that just gives you an idea of kind of where I'm coming from. So I'm going to look at your images tonight. My intentions are never to offend anyone, although, you know, that's always a little bit of fun on the side. But my intentions are to help you, hopefully, take better images. I think you learn by doing it, and then you learn by saying, okay, what am I missing, and how can I do this better? Your experience level, of course, is going to have an influence on what you do. So, you know, that's just a given. Once you've gotten up to about 127 years like me, you start running out of things to do wrong. But I'm not doing that yet. I'm still doing a lot of things wrong. So don't feel bad about yourself. Let me see what we can do here. Cardinal Rule, he's a great guy. This is good. I like the color. I like the basic idea. I think the capture is good. One of the things that you do when you're photographing subjects that have a life of their own, birds in particular, because they have a tendency to be there 1 second and gone the next, butterflies are another, is that you shoot a lot. You don't just take a picture and go, wow, that was really great, or immediately chimp on the back of the camera. You see something, you go for the focus, you try to get a basic composition, and you either just start pressing that shutter or you put it into the mode that, you know, so the camera just keeps running on its own. And you want to allow the bird to, you know, do its thing, but you also want to move the camera around as much as you can before you scare him away. And the objective is to get the best possible relationship between the foreground and the background, and the best possible composition you can get. And of course, the end result is usually that you crop in order to get your final composition, and that's not a problem. By moving the camera around, I would say that if you have options, that this little intersection here between the bright and the shadow and where his beak ends would be one of the things that I would look for an opportunity to make better, by moving the camera a little bit as you continue to shoot so that that wouldn't happen. This is pretty nice and sharp. There appears to be a nice highlight in the eye. And when you're shooting any kind of animal, and birds in particular, that highlight in the eye is extremely important. That shows life, and it also shows your point of focus. So it's very, very important. The only thing I like this, I wouldn't do much about it at all, with one possible exception, and that is if I were to crop, I wouldn't crop quite this tight. I would leave a little bit more room out here. There's several different ways to determine composition. If you want to go with the rule of thirds, because that's the simplest one to work with when you're getting started, he's a little bit out on the left edge of that. And I think I'd like to see that eye in here, or better yet, see the frame out here a little bit so that that eye ends up more into that, that portion of the composition. But it's a very good shot, good one. This is nice, and I'm a fan of the long, thin horizontal crop, so that's not a problem. And, you know, getting rid of unimportant information makes pictures better. I like the thought here. I like the idea. I like the capture. The downside is that it's a background looking for a subject. If this had a cannon in it sitting over here, or a guy on a horse here, or a guy in uniform standing out here, or a couple of guys walking, that would be even better. The problem is that without the title, this doesn't mean anything. So the picture has to tell the story all by itself, or just simply exist for its beauty, okay, if you want to go that route. So the Gettysburg Battlefield in the Fog title tells us what we're looking at and why the fence and where it was shot and all that sort of thing. But without the title, then there's less information, if you will. So, but it's well done. I like the fog. I love fog, so that's not a big deal. And a pretty good shot.
Bryson, are you okay if we take a minute to ask the photographer to comment?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we won't open it up to everybody, but it's interesting to hear what the photographer has to say.
Be my guest. Who did this one?
Thanks. Yeah, do we have the photographer for the Cardinal here?
Yeah, it's Richard Scar.
Okay.
Thanks, Bryson, for your comments. By the way, I used to head up global corporate communication at AMP, so I signed off on your invoices. So I'm glad you said nice things about that picture.
I really appreciate that, Richard.
Thank you very much.
Okay, number two.
This is my photograph, Dennis, and I showed it, I think, this past year here in Get.
We're apparently having a little audio problems, Dimitri. You're not coming through. Wow. Yeah, I'm sorry, Dimitri. We can't hear you. It's the audio is not coming through. Maybe we can try coming back to you a little bit later. It might improve. Okay, let's go on to number three.
Number three. When Autumn Never Comes. I like this. I think if this were my backyard, I'd be a lot happier than the one I own, which is not nearly this attractive. The colors are good. The basic balance of the image is good. I like the fact that the introduced color up here at the top and what's going on down here at the bottom mirror each other, and that sort of balances the thing out. Looking at the concept of, okay, what could be better about this? I think if this tone at the top, the color, and I don't know if it was introduced in post or if it was introduced using a filter, but I think it's a little strong. I think if it were weaker, because we tend to think that, you know, as you go up in the air, the sky, everything gets a little bit brighter. I think it's a little heavy in the color and in the density. for the image. I think I would back off on that a little bit. This isn't something, by the way, that I just do when I'm looking at other people's pictures. I share my images with other people and I ask them for this same kind of feedback. And I spend a lot of time looking at my images over and over, day after day, and saying, not, well, this is great. What did I just do here? This looks wonderful. I look at my pictures and say, okay, what could I do to this image that would make it even better than it is? And you just keep fooling until you can't stand it anymore. But it's a good photograph, and it's I think pretty well done. Who did this?
This is mine, Elaine Shook. Yes, Bryson, I did introduce that color in post via a gradient color filter. And the reason I did that is because truly I was trying to get an autumn look to this photo. Now it was taken in fall, albeit early fall, so the colors wouldn't normally have been very brilliant anyway. But that particular year, we never did get autumn color because the temperatures and the moisture were just not right for color that year. So later on in the year, I got a little desperate and I decided, well, I'm just going to make it look like fall. And so I introduced that warming filter top down to make it look warmer and look like it was, add some autumn color to it.
Good, very good. Well, there's several ways to do that. You picked one of them, and of course, there's no such thing as wrong. It's just a different way of doing things. But one of the things I do is I try to introduce something like this intensely. In other words, you overdo it to begin with, and then you just start to back off on the opacity of the layer that you use to create the effect until the whole thing just seems to sit there and look right. I think most of these things, vignettes in particular, have a tendency to overwhelm you if you don't give them an opportunity to back off. I think what you want to do is you want to say to yourself, I want to feel that effect, not see it, if that makes any sense. But good job. Nice picture. Very well. I hope that's not your backyard, because I'd be very jealous.
It's my front yard, Bryson.
It's what?
It's my front yard.
Oh my goodness gracious. That's worse.
Thank you for your comments, Bryson.
That's good. That's very good. Now here, excuse me. Hold on a second. One of those days. Here, I think there's two issues that I have to deal with. One of them is that the title definitely reinforces the concept of the photograph, but not everybody is going to immediately land on the fact that this is a piece of artillery here. I think most people will, but not everyone. In context with the slightly out of focus sign in the background and the title, you're going to make the leap. But I think in general, I would back off on this a little bit in terms of the zoom or with your feet. Leave a little more room. Get rid of that, and show a little bit more of the gun itself, of the barrel, so that you have a little bit more information for people to see. That I think is going to make that leap very, very quickly. The other thing is, I think I would move to the left, which would move this to the left and create a gap between this and the front of the gun. I think this, whatever structure this is with the American Legion placard out front, could be over here, just so that maybe this is really close to the edge. And there's a bigger gap between this and the gun, because them running together like this, I don't think is really necessary. So from a compositional standpoint, I would move the camera to the left and try to create a gap in there between them. When you find a good subject, I think you'll find that most of the photographers who teach will tell you the same thing. If you only take one picture and run, you're really kind of shooting yourself in the foot. Once you find something like this that you think is worth the effort, then make a better effort make more of an effort by shooting it from different angles and zooming a little bit and moving a little bit in order to have the option later to pick the best shot from a group. Excuse me. Because I don't know about you, but what I see with my eye, what I see with the camera, and what I see on my monitor are three different things. And I very often find pictures on the monitor that are better than what I thought I had when I shot. More often, what I see on the monitor isn't as good as the excitement I had when I shot it in the first place. So you have to give yourself the opportunity to make those decisions. So play a little bit more. But exposure-wise, and the finishing, the black and white, all pretty good. No, the blacks are not tanked. Good shadow detail, good highlight detail. Overall, the processing is pretty well done. So you're on your way. Who did that?
That's mine, Anthony Tamalonis. Thank you for your comments. I did walk around a bit, and part of the problem that I had was that there were things there, like right where this crank looks like it is, there's a garbage can there on the other side of it, right next to that sign, and I don't have the skills to take that out. I had everything I could do to take out a no parking sign all the way on the far left that was up in the photo. So, I mean, part of that's due to my ability in Photoshop, or my lack of ability. And I also didn't see the touching of the things. That is the truth.
Yeah. Well, these are things that over time you become more sensitive to. And, I would hesitate to go back to the beginning of my efforts and show you anything that I photographed because, I was in the same boat as everybody else at the beginning. You create stuff that, and as the years go by, you're just going to say, I really wish I hadn't done that. But I encourage you to keep learning Photoshop because taking out trash cans and stuff, unfortunately, becomes a part of what you do when you're taking pictures. Trust me, I do it a lot.
Thank you.
This is good. This is really good. Who blinks first? Or when, you go out far for a long pitch. I like this. I think it's good. This is one of those, I think strong vignettes are very popular in certain circumstances with certain photographers. This goes back to something I just said a moment ago, and that is I like to feel the things that you've done rather than see them. And I can see the vignette in here and I would rather feel it. So I think the vignette is a little dark on the edges. So I would probably back off on that just a little bit. But the detail, the black and white processing, the tonal values, I think are just really well done, especially for the subject, and they're very appropriate for the subject. So I think, aside from my nitpicking, I think it's a very good image. Who did this? Nobody owning up? It's a good shot, man. Take the
take the credit when you get it.
Take the credit when you can. Nobody.
Going once, going twice. Okay, number 6. Oh wait,
That
let's
was
ask
Joe
you-
Farrow.
Oh, no wonder. Okay, Joe's.
Were you taking a lunch break, Joe?
Yeah, he's on vacation with his family, so he has to be excused from the meeting, though. I was impressed with that.
Oh, there you go. Okay.
Okay, number 6.
Telling me he needs a doctor's excuse.
Yeah. No.
Okay. When you shoot architecturals, you really do have to, and you put them in front of somebody like me, you really have to make those verticals vertical. I'm sorry, whenever you pitch the camera up, the things that are higher than you are tend to come in toward the center. So the sides of the building, instead of being straight up and down, tend to lean in. And as you get in here and you get over here, they start to go in. You see how this leans into the left, this leans or to the right, this leans into the left. That is a dirt simple fix in Photoshop. And actually, I think you can do that in Lightroom without too much trouble. So I would highly recommend you learn how to straighten things, because it's not hard to do and it's worth the time. If you're only working in Lightroom, my next criticism would not be valid because it would drive you crazy. But if you work in Photoshop, all of these lines, the wires, make them go. It's a lot of work, but if the shot is worth it, then the work is worth the time and effort you put into it. It's difficult to do, and sometimes it's extremely difficult to do, but I just did one of those myself, and it took me the better part of 2 different afternoons in order to accomplish the work. But the result is a photograph that you could look at and go, oh, wow, you know, it was worth the time. The only other objection I have is I think color saturation. You've got a neutral, essentially neutral subject here. So that's not a problem. But if you're boosting the saturation, then the doors and the blue here and the blue up here have a tendency to pop a little bit too much. I think, again, in the idea that I want to feel it more than see it, I don't tend to be one of those people that likes heavy saturation. I don't think if I was driving down the street that red door is really that bright. Electric doors are not in favor right now. So, photographer. Nobody.
Rick, who took this one?
Zoe.
Oh, Zoe, you with us tonight? Apparently not. Okay, on to number 7.
This is good. This is well done. I would like to see a little bit more light work its way out into the fingertips, but I'm really nitpicking to go there because you know, this looks good, it feels good, it's basically well exposed, and if it's ambient light as opposed to something you did yourself, then you know you kind of have to live with that for the most part. Although you can fuss with some of this stuff in Lightroom or Photoshop, maybe darken this down a little bit in order to force the eye in to this area. Remember that photography is all about light. So where that light is coming from and where it's going and where it lands are all important in the way that the photograph comes together. This detail down in here, the roughness here, and all of this detail, the leather, that's just superb. And thank goodness it's all nice and sharp, and it's just a very, very well done. Good job. Who did this?
That's mine. It's Ron. This is actually my first try at light painting.
Oh, good.
So the lighting on here was done with a small flashlight.
Very good.
That was like a 2-minute exposure at f11 or something like that. I was curious. I actually submitted something else and then took it out and put this in because I got done with this like 10:30 on Friday night. I was messing around with it and I figured I'd submit it just to see what you guys thought of the lighting.
Now, did you try to do it all in one shot, or did you do it with multiple exposures?
No, it was done with one shot. It was just a 2-minute exposure and a small flashlight.
Okay.
I added some color in with Lightroom, but because it was pretty white. So
Yeah. Well, you did a good job with the color added too. It's very real. I wouldn't have thought you manipulated that. So that's a positive thing. You know, if you can fool them, then you've done your job right. That's good. Yeah, I recommend learning a whole lot about lighting because that's what we do, and those are the kind of controls you want to have. And if this is your first experience with light painting, I encourage you to keep going because you Keep it up.
I intended to after this was maybe the, oh, 1, 2, 3, 4. It was about the 6th or 7th try at it with this setup
Mhm.
till I got it a little bit to where I wanted it. And yeah, I kind of got hooked now.
It is an excellent way to work, and if you can get accustomed to the idea of multiple exposures and painting them together in Photoshop, that will give you even more options, and that's a good way to work.
Okay, well, thank you. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Should this have been titled My Grandson or My Son? Good idea, basically a nice shot. I kind of think I would have either cropped it or shot it a little bit tighter. Because if you're really interested in him, if he's going to look at you instead of looking at what's going on, so that it becomes a game shot. So now it becomes more of a portrait because he's looking at you, then I think there's too much support. So I would probably crop in on that a little bit. But it's basically well done. Thank goodness there's good light on his face, and that's really what makes the difference there, and that's a good thing. My primary objection is I don't know what the darkness is that's gone through here. It looks like somebody tried to burn something down. If you're working in Photoshop, there is a tool called Dodge and Burn. It's one of the first things that I tell people not to do because it just really doesn't work well. There are much, much better ways to approach this and make it felt instead of seen. This is way too badly done or wrongly done or something of that nature. So, because if it shows up that quickly, then it's not something you should do. All right. But the idea is good. I think the execution, basically to start with, is pretty good. Overall exposure seems pretty good. Just little details. Watch the details. Who did it?
Yeah, thanks. It's me, Dan. I did the, but like you said, the sky I tried to hit by just lowering the exposure on it. And yeah, I see your point there. And then opposite on the face, actually, I did up the exposure right on his face. And I think those are about the only two Lightroom edits I did on that, aside from the crop, just to keep it kind of long and narrow.
Did you do this with an adjustment brush?
I did it with like with the circle along the oval kind of thing, and then just took the exposure down on it.
Yeah. Okay. Well, again, once you have that exposure slider there on the right-hand side, that's movable. You can make that go back and forth until things.
Right.
I think if you overdo it and then back off, generally, if you get back to the point where you say this is real close to what it started, and then let go, you'll discover that you already darkened it more than you think you did, and that's going to be
right.
Okay. Good. Good
Thanks.
shot. Good shot. One of the things you can do with, if you have a group of photographers who can share with each other and be critical of each other and help each other out, which I think is a good idea. One of the things you want to do is send them this picture in an email. And the question you want, if you say anything at all, usually what I do is I send the picture and go, okay, hit me. And then somebody says, well, this is distracting, or that's too light or too dark or whatever. Then the next thing you want to do is say, what do you look at in my photograph? And they'll tell you something different than you think, because you're the photographer and you know what you were looking for and you know what you were after, and the title proves it. So a closer look inside says, pay attention to the middle of the flower. But that's not what the photograph says. The photograph says there's a flower in the middle of all this green. And I think this wouldn't be too hard to fix in Lightroom. I don't think you would need to go to Photoshop to get some real value out of this, because these greens, especially the brighter areas, could all be darkened, and the maybe even the hue could be shifted away from a little bit of the yellow here. The whites and the reds here could be taken down and everything, all of which would let this be of more importance and a little bit brighter relative to everything that's going on. Remember that the eye goes to a point of focus, it goes to motion, it goes to the brightest thing in the image, and it goes to the most colorful and saturated thing in the image. So what you have here is dark, unsaturated, and it's surrounded by a whole lot of things that make your eye want to go there instead of looking inside. In addition to that, if that's what you really want, I would have cropped this a bit tighter as well. And, but you know, I think your concept is good, but did you discover that after you shot, or did you think of that when you were shooting it in the first place? The outside edges here appear to be sharper than the center is anyway. And that would be one of those things where if you're working with autofocus, you want to get off of that and get on manual focus so that you could really nail the sharpness in the part of the image that you want people to see. The heck with the rest of it, okay? Who did?
Bryson, question for you.
Yeah.
If you focus on the stamen in the middle part of the flower, would you be concerned that the edges of the petals might be out of focus? Would you also want them sharp?
If this was my primary intention, I wouldn't worry about the outside. Yeah. And in fact, if you keep the depth of field more shallow and focus in here, I think it will become very obvious that your intention is for the person to look here and allow this to go out. And actually that will show up in another picture here, which and I'll get back to that thought when we get there.
Okay, thanks. Who's the photographer? Okay, Rick, who took this one?
It's Amy.
Oh,
I
okay,
took
Amy.
it. This is actually done with an iPhone on a walk, so I didn't have my Nikon with me as far as getting in like closer, and I haven't really played that much with the features on the iPhone 12. So I just thought it was kind of pretty, and I probably could have cropped it in a bit more. So yeah, that was a good comment. It was just kind of a spur of the moment, and maybe I should have chosen a different title. I see your point about that. I just didn't want to say blatantly tulip. That's kind of boring. So I'm just playing around with different ideas as to the title, but I thanks for the comments. I might play around with this a little more.
Yeah, it's probably worth the effort. Playing around is how you learn, and that's always a good thing. I really can't tell you how many times I've spent an hour working on a photograph and then trashed it. So, you know, keep going, keep working.
Yeah.
I like this. This is pretty well done. The balance of tonalities is good. The composition is good. And the blurred motion really gets the point across. If you'd have froze this guy, you would have kind of wondered why he, you know, how he was balanced there, and that wouldn't have been good. So this whizzing by is very good. There's a school of intentional camera movement, and there's also a school of intentional subject movement, and that's what this falls into. And they're all part of an overreaching concept that could be called abstract impressionism, and I'm a fan. So this is good. Now I assume that she's like a monitor or something, that she's not just some poor soul that happened to be standing there. I got a badge here and a flag and stuff that tells me that this is an event. So it all works pretty well. I think this is pretty well done. Who did that?
That's Mary Eileen Carson's photo. It took a lot of tries because I kept getting a sharp motorcycle shot, and I wanted a blurred motorcycle shot with the monitored area. She was a monitor.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've got a whole lot of rejects surrounding this one. But yeah, this was at the dirt bike track field trip we took, about a week or two ago.
Oh,
And I really wanted, I mean, I took some of this, you know, the shots of people on their bikes flying through the air, but I wanted something a little different. So I started focusing on that monitor and trying to get something different.
good choice. Good choice.
Thank you.
And
Thank-
well done. I like this. I like the simplicity of it. From a compositional standpoint, I say hurrah. I think you did good. You could pull the top down a little bit, but that's nitpicking. I don't think that that's absolutely necessary. The way that it sits in the frame, I think is very, very good. One of the artists that I watch on occasion said that the way to learn how to pay attention to something is not to pay attention to it, but to pay attention to what's around it. Look at the negative space as opposed to the positive space. And in this case, everything that isn't a leaf is negative space, and that's what gives it a place to live in, and that's what makes it interesting. I think if it were possible, and this is again, you know, nitpicking, but I think from here along this ridge line all the way down to here, if that were sharp and that were the primary plane, that would also work. And in order to have that whole thing in focus and sharp, you would have to be the plane of that line, and the back of the camera would have to be parallel. So that would be one of those things you'd have to set up and make sure that they're both there together so that the depth of field wouldn't become an issue. If you could do that and pull this in to sharp focus as well, then I think that would be also another very strong image. I'd get rid of this little tiny thing that doesn't make a lot of sense. But other than that, I think this is really nicely done. Who did this?
This is Mark Albano. I did. Bryson, thanks for the comments. This was one of these things that I was actually out doing bird photography, so this was shot at a very close distance with 560 millimeter lens.
Good.
So I had a real shallow depth of field to deal with.
Yeah, good. Well, it's good. It's good. And sometimes things like this are a great way to blow an afternoon, because you could literally spend a long time photographing and rephotographing and moving and playing, and then have those options later to look at what the results are. And then you really can't, as much as you try, you can't say, oh, this is exactly how I want to see this thing, and do it the first shot. It never works. Trust me, been there, done that.
Yeah.
But I think that this is a valiant effort and a really good shot. So good.
Well, thank you. And I'm going to keep that in mind and work on it a little more.
Wonderful. Now, speaking of spaces, you can't argue with a shot like this. I mean, you know, you don't take any time to set up, you just do it. And I love the am I too close to this? This is just a good capture. And, you know, what do you say? It is what it is. I wouldn't have done it any differently. I couldn't have done it any differently. The only thing you can do is, if you have now I'm going to give my age away. I'm forgetting what the digital statement is, but in the old days, we used to call them motor drives, where you press the shutter down and you just get 15 shots in 1 second, and then you find out which one has the best interaction between the two planes and the best composition between them. But good shot, nice capture. Who done it?
I did, Terry Longenecker. That was taken down at Annapolis, 2018, I think it was. No, 19. And those birds came in so fast. We were shooting at 1/4000th of a second to stop them.
Yep. Yep.
And these guys, I shot this at 100 millimeters, and it was just one of those shots.
Yeah, I know what you mean. Good job, Terry.
Thank you.
You did a good job. It's a nice capture. Notice
And
they have their landing gear down to slow them down a little bit.
yes, they drop, when they do close maneuvers like this, they drop their landing gear and that helps to control them as they're coming together.
Yeah,
And it's a lot closer than you think it is there. I mean,
but
one little mistake and they'd have both been gone.
if you could hear them on the radio talking to each other, they go through these maneuvers and they literally count. So one of them is in charge and they go 1, 2, 3, 4. And so their hearts are beating in sync with each other in order to do these maneuvers. And it's really impressive. Good job, Terry.
On that particular day, I got a shot of these guys and nobody will believe me, but I can prove it. There were 2 bald eagles flying at the same time these jets were flying.
No, I don't believe it.
I'll send you the photo.
Very good, Terry. Very good.
Thank you.
Spring has sprung. This is a good capture. This is really good. The nice sharp eye just nails it, and then that everything else falls into place. The little extra plays of color, slightly out of focus and more out of focus, a little blue down here. That's wonderful. The only thing I would have done any different is I would have taken this light spot in the upper right-hand corner and just taken it out. That could be done with clone or heel, depending on where you're working, and it wouldn't have been hard to do. And I think that would have been worth it. It just would have sealed the deal. But a nice sharp tail down here. This is just really, really nicely done. Good job. Who did this?
That's mine, Jim Berlinger. Thanks for your comment. I'm gonna go back and take that upper right-hand corner out for sure.
Yeah, good one.
This is I took about 6 or 7 shots of him. And,
He was cooperating, huh?
not all the shots he was cooperating. I finally got the head
Yeah,
in the direction I wanted. I didn't want a 100% profile picture. That doesn't look too good. I wanted some character and interest to it.
yeah. Well, where he's sitting and the composition and then him looking this way, that all works. That's the way it's done. That's the way we see. So good. Very
You know
nice.
what kind of bird it is, Jim?
It's a goldfinch. It's a male.
Oh, okay.
He's molting.
Very good. Excellent. This picture is sold by the title, the Soccer Mentor. But I think the problem here is similar to the flower we saw earlier, and that is that the primary area is a little dark, a little flat, and surrounded by a whole lot of distraction. And I think I probably would have cropped down pretty tight to the top here. Maybe come in far enough here to at least get rid of these windows at the edge and make a good solid line, come in on the other side and come in on the bottom far enough to get rid of this distraction in the corner. And then I would have darkened everything around this and made this area contrastier and a little brighter. And if you're saying, well, that would be hard to do, actually, no, it's not all that hard to do. You need to play with it. You need to experiment with it. You need to learn it. But it is something that's worth learning because it's going to help you tell the story a little bit better. I understand the impetus. I understand, oh, that's nice. I should shoot that. But then you have to also realize what are people going to look at? This is a background behind this. And most people looking at this shot to me would say, did you miss the players? Are they out here on the right? And, they should be in here playing. Or possibly even if there were people playing in here, it would make even more sense. And that could be kind of nice too. But I see why you shot it. And I think it's a pretty good idea. I just think it needs to be managed a little better in order for me to pay attention to what I think you really meant to say. Okay? Who did it?
That's mine, John Kern.
Mm-hmm.
And that was shot in a tour of Buenos Aires, going down the street in a bus with my iPhone.
No.
That and I probably would have never put this shot into a competition, but I wanted your comments on it because I like the idea of the again, taking picture of an artwork, you know, is kind of like, yeah, you know, who's the artist? Is it the photographer, or is it the painter? So this was a painting done on a mural on the side of a building, but it was a soccer hero from Buenos Aires with a kid, and it happened to be, and I didn't see this before, and it happened to be right at the end of the soccer field.
Yeah, very good.
And so I really just wanted your comments. I wanted some ideas of what you thought about it, but it was a one-shot wonder.
Yeah,
And,
what we call a memory photo, you know? Yeah.
But I liked some of my street photography. I like some of the stuff I do, and it was just one of those shots that, all right, I got the barbed wire around the fence with the soccer field in the middle, and this was one of Buenos Aires' famous soccer players, and this field is at a school where kids go out and play soccer all day long in their free time. So anyway, I didn't want to crop out too much because I wanted to show it was a cityscape, and it was, you know, I know there's cars on the left, there's bushes, but it was, I wanted your comments, but thank you very much. It was, I got out of it what I wanted to.
Good, very good.
Thank you very much, Bryson.
Wonderful. I mentioned abstract impressionism earlier, and this is definitely in that category. I'm not entirely sure how it was made. I'm not entirely sure which part of that concept this falls into, and I don't really care. I think the primary thing you're looking at when you're looking at a picture like this is, how does it look, and does it get across what I want to say? Does my eye go where I want people to see it? Does the picture flow? Does the composition work? Do the colors work, et cetera, et cetera? This isn't bad. This is pretty good. I think you have to remember when you shoot stuff like this, or you create it in any other way, that all of the rules, if you will, I'm a non-rule guy, but if all the rules still apply, you have to have composition, you have to have movement, you have to have a place for the eye to land, which could be called the subject, whether it's a real subject or just an impression of an idea. Everything that applies to recognizable photography that satisfies the left side of your brain still applies when you're satisfying the right side of your brain. And this is a right brain photo by all estimates. So it's pretty well done. I think it could be a little stronger in having a significant subject. I'm going to suggest this as the landing spot, so that in that respect, that would be where I would want to go. But the only way you know whether you're getting anywhere with these is to just play until something feels right. That's it. Whose job?
Hi, this is Dave Marchetto. Thank you, Bryson. I appreciate those comments.
That all you have to say?
Well, actually, it's a pinhole camera image.
Oh.
Mike Donovan gave a talk a few weeks ago for the club, and I was really impressed with the whole concept. I used to think pinhole cameras were something you did in science class out of an oatmeal container.
There you go. Very good. Well, that's how we learn. Play. Outcrop. Title's almost unnecessary, but that doesn't matter. This is nicely done. Good exposure, good balance, good composition. I really wish that I could, eliminate spray cans from the world. Because this stuff does, to me, this isn't where art is made, this beautiful spot should not be fussed with like this. But the image itself, the capture says a lot, and it's really, it's one of those places that at my age I go, no, I'm never going to go up there. It's too much walking. But it's a good photograph. It's well done, nicely seen, nicely balanced, etc. Whose job? Who done it?
That's mine, Bryson, Norbert Fry. Thanks for the comment, Bryson. What I did is I shot this down low. I shot with a 15mm lens. Wow. And I got down low on a tripod and tried to shoot up to get the feel of it going up to over that outcrop. That's what I was going for.
Yeah.
And this graffiti in this place is just, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
It's everywhere. Yeah.
Well, you accomplished what you intended to do, and that's a good thing. So yeah, good job, Norbert. Very good.
Bryson.
Now we're talking about in and out of focus here, Dennis, earlier. Compositionally speaking, I'm thinking that what I want to see be my primary subject here is right here. This is the center of the flower. This is where my eye wants to end up after everything else is done. So compositionally, I think it's a little bit closer to center than I would like it to be. If you put something in the center, then I want it to be in the center, and no question about it. I don't like ambiguity in that respect. But I'd like to see this down a little bit lower and off to the right, or down a little lower and off to the left, in order for it to sit in more of a sweet spot visually. But the in focus, out of focus conversation is very important here. What's happening here and here and here is absolutely wonderful. Look at all this soft focus stuff that just bleeds color from one tone to another and everything, and says wonderful things. But if this is where you want to look, you don't want this sharpness to take over your eye. And that's what happens here. The focus is too close to the camera as opposed to back in here. And so these elements become what you look at by default. Your eye, remember, goes to the bright and the subject and the sharpness and the contrast, all by default. That's just the way our brains work. So this kind of softness is what I would be looking for. You could create that softness in post with this area. So, you might want to consider that if this is something you feel you could work on a little bit more. But I'd move this, and then I would soften this and just blend it in a little bit better so that that eye ends up exactly where you want it to be. You're controlling where people look. That's the whole thing.
That's mine, Bryson. That's mine. And I like thank you so much for your comments, because once you pointed out that one that should be off center, you're right. I didn't even think of that. And softening the left side, I didn't realize it wasn't soft. So thank you very much.
Well, I think I'd like to see you do something with this and then have it show up again, because you can't fight this kind of beauty, right? It's just there. So you have to work with it.
Thank you, Bryson.
Very nice. I got nothing bad to say about this picture. How's that for comments? I'm assuming this was taken at a recreation. The digital cameras back at the point in time when the Battle of Manassas was fought were really pretty low res. So I have to assume this is a more current photograph. So it's nicely done, rendered to monochrome with a tone, and it's well composed. It makes sense. I don't see a reason for anything to be critical. I would just simply frame it and put it on a wall.
Nice.
Who done it?
That was mine. I happened upon this reenactment at the Daniel Lady farm. I hadn't planned to go, and it was just wonderful. I took over 1,000 photos. I just can't say enough about this reenactment, and hopefully maybe next year the club can go. As I say, I hadn't planned on it. I just happened to go by and there it was, so I stopped.
Well, I saw the other photos you posted on Facebook, and you've got a wonderful collection of photos
Yeah.
from that reenactment.
Yeah. Well, I was limping around, so this guy with a golf cart said, "Let me take you down to where they're going to be. I'll take you to the best spot." And
Nice ploy, Diane.
yeah, hey, you got to play that card every now and then.
Very good.
Very good. That's great, Diane.
Thank you.
Nice job. Nice job.
Thank you for your comments.
No problem. Anytime. And the last one, tree corridor at Opossum Lake. And this, of course, is the corridor. Now we get into the concept of symmetry, and we get into balance inversion, verticals, and all that sort of thing. I would make this my center line, and I would make it distinctly vertical, which you'd be done with a crop, and you just rotate it until this line becomes vertical. Everything here, for the most part, is leaning to the right, which says to me that that would be possible to do without too much work at all. I would soften the highlights. I think the brights are too bright. And once you got that symmetry going for you, I think you would discover that this would become a much more interesting and powerful image. And that would encourage you to work on it a little bit more, which I think is another good thing. That's one of the things about playing with the crop tool and composition, et cetera, that's really interesting. And that is the first thing you do is you look at it, you say, that's a pretty interesting image. And then as you fuss with it, you go, hey, you know what? That's a really nice image. And then you work on it a little bit more, and you get to the point where you have something that is excellent instead of just simply nice. So taking the brights down, especially on this edge here, because if this guy's going to stay in after you do all your cropping and everything, then being bright and right on the edge and just sucking your eye out there is not a particularly good thing. So you'd want to take him down a fair amount. You can do it with a gradient. Sometimes you can do it with a selection. If you're in Photoshop, you can do it. I would increase the contrast and lower the brightness. It takes a little bit of fussing, but it certainly can be done. And I think it would be worth the effort. So you got a good start with a good capture. Just work a little harder. Who done it?
Thanks, Bryson. That's me, Rod Frazier. I took this about a year ago. I went to Opossum Lake to take a picture of some waterfowl, but there weren't any in the lake at the time. So I walked up to the woods and I saw this corridor and I said, oh, I just got to take that. So I took it in color, and then when I put it on my laptop, I thought put it in black and white would make it pop some more, but I didn't play too much with it after that.
Yeah, well, you gotta just keep playing, I think. And when you convert from color to black and white, then one of the things you want to play around with is your white balance and your tint, because sometimes you'll discover that the blues in the sky and the different tones on the trees will translate differently to black and white, and that effort is worth playing with too, because you'll discover things that you didn't expect to happen will happen. But you got a good start. Just keep on working, okay?
Thank you.
And that's the last one. So
Okay, Bryson, could we jump back to image number 2? Dimitri was having audio problems earlier. Dimitri, let's try it again. Would you like to comment on your image?
Yes, can you hear me now, Dennis?
Yes, we can.
All right. Yeah, I shot this photo here, I think this past winter in the battlefield, what I go almost every day, especially in the winter time, simply because of situations like this. Because in the summertime, everybody takes the same photo, the same weather, same everything. And this gives it a little different kind of concept and makes it softer and a little more moody, which resembles the notion of the war, of death. And I have many photos like that in the fog and snow and everything else. I like them. And since I live, this is about 1.5 miles from my house, I just took another shot.
Okay, thank you. At this time, let's open it up for comments or questions for Bryson.
Bryson, I have a question for you, Terry.
Yeah, Terry.
On my photo there with the two birds, I call them birds. I was trying to get the area around the number 4 to tone down. It seemed a bit too bright to me. How can you do that? I've tried several different tools and I just don't have any luck.
Well, it really depends on how specular that was. If the reflection of the sun onto the sensor was strong enough, it would clip and it would be very difficult for you to accomplish anything at all.
Okay.
Without seeing the file, I can't make too many comments, but I think doing the selection and selecting the total area of highlights and playing with that slider that starts at 190 and just kind of move it back and forth until you pick up this area. So you don't want to see the blues, you just want to see these whites.
Mm-hmm.
And then then you can you go to selective color and add black to the whites, or go to curves and take the upper right hand side of the curve and pull it down so that it grays this down a little bit, and see if one of those two techniques would help you out a little bit. Sometimes when these things are specular and they just really blow out hard, it's difficult to bring them back. But if the dynamic range of your camera is sufficient and the exposure is such that you have a little bit of room up there at the top, then you could bring a lot of that back. The problem is that you're going to have a difficult selection to work with. And I think the idea of a mask where you could blur that mask so that you could blend the tones in is going to be something you're going to have to work on, because anything that's too hard a selection is going to make itself known pretty fast. So
Okay.
it's a little bit of work, but it's worth it.
Thank you.
Sure enough.
Bryson, hi, it's Ray Scott. I have a quick question. It may be too complicated to answer, but I'm in the midst of producing a second photographic children's book, and my book co-author and I kind of go back and forth on this. Is there a quick rule of thumb when you're shooting? I'm shooting a lot of pelicans now, which are very difficult to shoot, and particularly getting them to dive. Is there a quick kind of reference point when you're looking at an image in Lightroom, for example, untouched? Like my book partner, for example, says just expand it out to 400% and see the resolution, the clarity. If it's not fairly clear, then it won't print in the book very well as photographic. Is there a rule of thumb like that, or am I oversimplifying it?
That's a hard question to answer with the information you've given me. I'd actually have to see an image or two that you're talking about and have a discussion on that. I doubt that there's a rule. Are you talking about the tonal value or the sharpness, or?
No, it's actually has to do more with sharpness and noise.
Well, the more you can reduce noise, the better off you're going to be for something to reproduce.
Yep.
You got to remember when you're looking at it on screen that you're looking at it, if you're looking at it at 100%, real pixels,
yep,
it's 3 times what it's going to end up being in terms of reproduction. So it's already 3 times bigger. So you're looking at a lot more detail than the actual printing will show.
Oh, okay. That helps. That helps.
Right. So then if you go up 400% from there, then you really are looking at fine detail, and it would be hard to make a judgment call on that without seeing an image.
Good. Thank you very much. I'll be calling my co-author now. Thanks.
Sure enough.
Other questions or comments for Bryson? Okay, want to alert everybody to a minor change that we're making for future image reviews and competitions. We're going to change the deadline for submission to Thursday night at midnight instead of Friday. Okay, we need a little more time to get things ready to go and get the images to our judge or reviewer. So henceforth, and I'll publish this repeatedly, but the deadline will be midnight Thursday. And I want to thank Rick for his continued efforts here. And every time we have an image review or a competition, it means Rick has to take these images and put them into a PDF and get them to the judge or the reviewer. And then he shows up at the meeting to help us out. So thank you very much, Rick. Any other questions or comments there for Bryson before we wrap up?
Hey, Dennis.
Yes, Norb.
Hey, someone I saw something in the chat down here. Someone asked what that graffiti was at. That is Penmore.
Where's Penmore?
Penmore is in Smithfield. It's in the right near Waynesboro, Pennsylvania. It's up off of High Rocks up there. Matter of fact, someone told me, I haven't been up there for about 3 years. I don't know. But someone told me they're trying to remove that graffiti up there. I don't know if that's true or not. And
Yeah, Vicki Sanders, do you know anything about that?
Yes, the county had volunteers and some of their staff go up and clean it out. And it was posted all over Facebook that it was done, and the graffiti people came right back.
Ugh.
So it
Yeah,
was only clean for a couple days.
yeah, that's what I thought. The last time I was there, I got a little story to tell you. Right, I didn't realize that, but Sector R is located right behind that. There's a gate that goes into Sector R, which is a very high security area with the military. It's with the Pentagon, matter of fact. The gate was open. I just drove in and started driving down. All of a sudden, all these military vehicles came out with Marines with guns and all, and they escorted me out of there. They said, "What are you doing in here?" Hey, I saw the gate open.
Yeah, the gate is just past the parking area for the area where your picture was.
Yeah.
And I believe that's Site C. Site R is down between Fairfield and Blue Ridge Summit.
Yeah, somewhere in there. Yeah, that's what they said. Okay, but it was interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a beautiful place.
Very good. Okay, Bryson, thank you very much. As always, we appreciate your insight and your review of the comments. How about a nice round of applause for Bryson there, guys?
Thank you all. Thank you all.
Thank you, Bryson.
Okay, as usual, I get the follow-up email out tomorrow with the link to the recording and a mention about all the upcoming events. So thanks, guys, and good night.
Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you very much.